Welcome back, guys, to Cool Ryan's Chess, and today I'm going to be speaking about how I made a Grandmaster had to beg me for a draw in my game. 2500 Grandmaster from Argentina, by the way. Okay, so we're gonna go through this game. I was playing this game back in 2021 in the Fide World Cup qualifiers. After qualify to the World Cup, yes, a lot of qualification. So I got paired up against a 2500 Grandmaster from Argentina in this game back in 2021. I was playing black in this game, and it was a best of two. It was the first game. My opponent started with pawn to d4, queen's pawn open. Everybody should know this. It's very, very common. So I responded back with pawn to d5, just very easily. See what my opponent's play here. Plays pawn to c4, going into the queen's gambit opening. So I played the queen's gambit decline. I played pawn to e6. Very, very easy opening. So you don't need anything here. You played knight to c3. Simple, still mainline queen's gambit, and I'm in queen's gambit decline, but I switch it up. I didn't continue with the mainline queen's gambit decline. I played knight to f6, right? I played pawn to c6, transpose it into the semi-slab defense. You guys can learn this opening is very, very solid, very, very easy. And I played against a 2500 Grandmaster, and I had him begging for a draw, right? So my opponent continued with knight to f3. Knight to f3 developed his pieces very easily. He continued with knight to f6 in the semi-slav, and then he played bishop to f4, controlling this diagonal. This really great diagonal. You don't really want your opponent to, so I challenged the bishop, right? Played bishop to d6, challenge that bishop. We know that when our opponent played London system, this is not really London system, but when our opponent plays London system, we normally want to challenge that bishop, right? My opponent captured the bishop. I play queen captures back, trading the bishop, quit trading off. Queen is in the game now. Plays pawn to e3. Looking to get out his bishop. I play knight b to d7, developing another piece. You have to develop these pieces, get these pieces in the game as best as possible. We can see we have a kind of triangle pawn pyramid here. It doesn't really matter. We have to get out this bishop, and this bishop normally is going to come out by b6, bishop b7 with pawn to c5, rook to c8, and castle or king. That's the whole setup here that's the whole plan here in the semi-slab defense. Getting our bishop here on this long diagonal to put pressure, and then we want to control the e5 and e4 square. Right now we're controlling the e4 square because his knight can't go there right now. My opponent continued with pawn captures, trading the c pawn off, not pushing past and trying to take more space. I capture back with e pawn. One is to get the bishop out, and I didn't want the knight to come to d5 to attack. It doesn't really do much now, but I didn't want that knight to come here, and I want to keep the c file as close. We're still going with our plan. My opponent continued with queen to c2, getting his queen out, developing his queen a bit, and getting his queen on this diagonal. Doesn't really do much. Castle the king. We know we must castle the king. King safety is very important. Bishop to d3 is played next, and you can see that the bishop and the queen are both on this nice long diagonals, and it's attacking the pawn on h7. But our knight is defending that pawn on h7, so we don't really have to worry as yet. And he's also looking to control the e4 square, putting more pressure on the e4 square, so I can't have any pieces going into the e4 square, right? So I play rook to e8, getting my rook into the game. You need to get a rook into the game as best as possible. My opponent's castle his king, because his king was in the center of the board. Once your opponent king is in the center of the board, you normally want to try attack it. So he got his king out center of the board, which is very, very important. I play queen to e7. Queen to e7 has an interesting idea here. I want to get my knight to e4 and probably move like f5, and then probably get my other knight into the game and get my bishop out on this diagonal. Well, we can't get there because of pawn f5, but I want to get my knight on this square e4 here, right? So my opponent played knight to d2. Why? To stop my knight from e4, putting more defenders on the e4 square, and then I have attackers, right? So continue with knight to f8, getting the knight all the way up to bishop, and also the knight can get to rear out to g6 to e6, putting pressure somewhere else. The knight can go to g6 to h4, looking to look for some sacrificial idea here. It doesn't really matter. Also, the knight is protecting the pawn on h7. Maybe you want to move this knight. Maybe you want to move to f9, knight on f6 further in the game. My opponent continued with rook to b1. Rook A to B1. He's trying to start a minority attack on the queen side. So you have to be careful about that. I play B6. Remember, we'll talk about our plan. We're trying to open up the C file and trying to get our bishop on the long diagonal. Okay. Plays B4. Let's continue with this plan. Bishop to B7. Getting our bishop out. Pawn to E4. And now knight to E6. Why knight to E6? Knight to E6 is to put another defender here on the C5 square, because I want to play C5 and get my rook to C8. Pawn to A5 was played, pawn to C5 was played, and then we have pawn to A6. So pawn to A6 is attacking your bishop. That's the first. And once it captures your bishop, it's going to be attacking the rook. So you can't look to push past as yet. If you push past, he takes your bishop, and then after you take his bishop, he takes your rook, promote to a queen, and after you take his queen, I mean, it is not the, I guess you can say, the safest move here. So you don't want to do this against a grandmaster. Remember, grandmasters are very, very strong opponents here, and he's a 2500 rated grandmaster at this way. Yeah, he's still human, but you want to show him a bit of respect. You don't want to be disrespectful. So we continue with bishop to c6. Why not c8? C8, you're just blocking out the rook. Remember, you want your rook to get to c8, not the bishop. And then you're going to have to move the bishop again to d7 to get the bishop in. No, and also, he's stopping the bishop from coming here to attack your rook one time. Once the bishop goes here, you're able to capture, and then you're able to push past and create a pass pawn and create problems on the queen side for your opponent. Pawn to d5 was played, bishop to d7, and then he played knight back to f3. The threat is no longer here on the e4 square. Maybe he wants to play his knight to e5. Okay, you play capture because you want him to play knight captures, and then you want to get your rook to the open file, or you're going to capture. You want to create an isolated pawn. You already have the isolated pawn. You want to give him an isolated pawn as well. He plays capture, and then you get the rook to c8. Now the rook is on c8. This knight is being pinned to the queen. And now you're looking at moves such as queen here, maybe even knight here, and you're looking to apply pressure to the pin piece. Remember, pin pieces, you want to apply pressure to the pin piece. Put pressure on the pin piece. Put the PP on the PP. Okay? So, he plays queen to d2, getting his queen out of the pin, and maybe trying to get his. So, I play queen to d6. What? Queen to d6 gets my queen off the same line as the e-file. Maybe he wants to put a rook on the e-file, because both of my rooks are on open files here. Okay? He plays rook f to e1. See there, getting his rook on the e-file. And now I play queen to f4. What is queen to f4? You might say, what does queen to f4 do? Queen to f4 is a very, very interesting. He might catch you out, but he might not catch the grandmaster out. Right? So queen to f4, he cannot capture the queen on f4, because I'm going to play knight takes on f4, and I'm going to be applying pressure to the bishop, undefended bishop on d3, and also the undefended knight on c3. So there's too many problems here in this position for my opponent here. And it doesn't matter if after queen takes, knight takes, and after rook takes, I'm not going to capture back with my rook, I'm just going to capture back with my bishop. And both pieces are still going to be undefended and under attack. He can't protect both. He's going to lose one of them. Okay, he might lose one for a pawn, but he's going to lose one of them. And if I'm going up a piece against a 2500 grandmaster, I don't care if you're Magnus, I'm beating. Especially the queens off the board. Okay, so my opponent played rook to e3, because I'm assuming my opponent doesn't really want to go back into the pin, right? Doesn't really want to go back into the pin, because I'm just going to play knight captures here on d4 to put pressure on the knight, and also want him to capture so I can add more pressure to this pin knight here. Okay, so my opponent played rook to e3. Now I play this move, knight to g4, applying pressure again to the rook and trying to force the rook to move. The rook goes back to protect the queen. I just capture the queen. If rook captures, I win the knight. Right? Because remember, the queen is the only defender of this knight here on c3. Right now, I am having a better position than Grandmaster. I'm all playing a Grandmaster. Positional chess wins again. Go and watch the video about positional chess. Slowly but surely outplaying the spirit of playing these opponent. You don't always need tactics. Tactics are very good to have. My opponent plays knight captures here on d5, attacking the queen, and also he's attacking the queen. You have to be careful in this position here. You can't just be doing any and any little thing. So play queen e6, and then my opponent played rook to e5. Rook to e5. What does rook to e5 do? That is an exchange. Yes, he's giving away an exchange because he's going to lose. He's just going to lose a piece either way. So I capture the rook here on e5. Captures back with a pawn. Can't capture with the knight. I'm just going to lose the knight for free. And no, I can't capture this knight. Don't bother getting excited and saying, "Oh, I just want a piece against it." No, I can't capture that knight as of yet. Can't capture that knight. The reason why I cannot capture the knight as of yet is because you still have this skewer where he's this discovered attack that he's going to win your queen, and you're beating a grandmaster, and then this video would be, oh, a 2500 grandmaster begging me for a draw. It would be I was winning against a 2500 grandmaster and I blundered because I just always blunder. Okay, so I played queen to c5, and this is where you have to be careful on what you're playing stronger opponents, especially a grandmaster, because every time you feel they're out of a game, they come back with something very good. Right now he's losing. He doesn't really have much. He can't let me put my pieces together, especially this bishop is not on a proper square as yet. This bishop would probably like to be on e6. That diagonal is better for it. These rooks would probably like to be on the e rook would probably like to be on d8, controlling the d file. I'm already controlling the c file. The knight would probably like to be somewhere a bit better, to be honest. I don't know where is a bit better. Maybe c5 would have been better for the knight and outpost there. But e6 is good for the knight, but the bishop is not at the best square because these pawns are stopping the bishop from coming to this long diagonal, very long diagonal. So my opponent played knight e6, knight f6 check, sacrificing knight. And when you're playing a grandmaster, 2500 grandmaster, you have to ask yourself, even if you're not playing a grandmaster, your opponent did something that you saw, but you didn't really calculate it a lot. And you have to say to yourself, what does this piece do? What does this piece do? Can I ignore the sacrifice? Right? That's the first thing. Can I just run away? And no, you can't just run away because he just wins the bishop and or he just wins back the rook and what you didn't really get what you wanted out of the position, right? And is it that can I just capture the knight, right? So you have two ways. You cannot block a knight check. You cannot block a knight check. So you have capture or run away. Running away is not really the best idea. So capturing, and you have to ask yourself, well, after capture, your king is going to be a bit exposed. Do you have enough pieces to cover the king? And he has his bishop pointing towards the king, his queen pointing towards the king side. How can we defend this? So I captured that knight. I said, bring it on, Grandmaster. Let's see what you have in the position. Let us see what you have in this position. And he played this move, queen to h6. The best. And queen to h6 is a winning move if you don't find the right idea, if you don't find the right defense for it. Right? And you're playing you're playing and you're up and you're like, oh, defense, right? You have to find the right defense here. And if you don't find the right defense, you're just going to lose this game because the sacrifice was to make you find the right defense. And his threat is to capture here, check, king over, bishop, no, not bishop here, bishop back to g6 check, king back to here, queen check, and then queen f7 check. That's the threat here. That's a simple mating pattern. That's the threat here. And you just can't just capture this pawn here and say call it a day. You can't. Or either you can't just say let me go knight f8. if you say knight f8, that is incorrect. Knight f8, he's just going to capture the pawn here. And how do you prevent the queen to go to g7? How do you prevent an h7 checkmate? You can't prevent both of them. And it's super important that you have to prevent both of them. You have to at least prevent one of them that you have to prevent. Okay? So what is the defense here? How can you stop this? How can you stop this? And what is the move here? I give you some time to think about it. Okay, for those who maybe said sacrifice the queen, let's say for those who said play knight here, congratulations, you just lost the game to a 2500 Grandmaster. You were just winning and you just lost the game. No, so those are not the move. The move actually is for those who found the moves, pawn to f5. And I just don't want you to find the move. I want to say to yourself, what does this move does? I just explained it, so you should already know what this move does. This move does, it stops the pawn from going to f6. And you give him back a pawn. And the reason why it's so important to stop the pawn from going to f6, remember, you don't want to cover two checkmates because you cannot cover both of them at the same time. Your knight can only cover them one at a time. And you have no other piece that can come back and cover the other one quickly in time. Queen can come back and prevent the one on g7, but she can't prevent the one on h7. Knight can come back and prevent the one on h7, but can't prevent the one on g7. So, pawn to f5, it stops the pawn from coming to f6. Okay? The knight can't come in because you just want to trade it. That's why the knight can't come in. And he captures here. And now you have to find other move. Yes, the other move now is more simple. Knight to f8. Why is knight f8? Knight f8 does two things. Protects the h7 checkmate and it protects the bishop on d7. The bishop is putting pressure on this bishop here, and it is also you don't have to worry about the g7 checkmate anymore. Okay, so this is how we think about our defensive, and this is where the Grandmaster is like, I got to beg this guy for a draw because I did my sacrifice, didn't work, and I just got to play for what we call perpetual check. So check, king has to go over, check, king comes back over, check. And for those who are saying, so why don't you knight block? Knight block doesn't help you in the position. Knight block is just going to take the bishop. He's going to take the bishop here. And remember, you just sacrificed a piece and you just got back the piece, right? So, after knight block, it takes, let's say you move your rook. So you move your rook here. Takes, maybe takes, and you are down 2 pawns in this position. And this might be playable at certain points in time, but it's not the best. And we look at the engine, we can see that maybe white is up 2 pawns here. And I wish, see that you're +3 down. You're down by +3. And that can't be good for you at all in the position. Right? So you just went from maybe a winning game to a losing game. So he begged for a draw. You just have to shake his hand and say, "Hey, you got the best out of me." And he got the three-peat petrol checks, and he's going to continue checking because let's say he delays the check for 1 second. For example, remember you're still threatening this. This is still a threat on the chessboard. Let's say he had maybe gone. There's nothing in the position I can think about that he can play here. He can't capture. Because of the capture, you go knight captures, and after check here, now you escape. And as a check, you do have king here because there's no check here or no check here. And if he goes, I don't know, the knight here, that doesn't work because this is queen here is a checkmate. So the knight can't move. And if he captures here, yeah, if he captures there, this is a losing, right? It Is knight capture, or maybe as queen check here. And if king checks, if king up and queen check, I mean it captures. I don't think there's any checkmate on the board. I do think you'll escape the checks eventually. But you have to still be careful in this position. This position is still good. So that's the game of how I let a 2500 Grandmaster beg me for a draw. So guys, please share, like, and subscribe. See you again.